Okay, let's talk about a story that is just absolutely wild. It's about a man named Devender Sharma. Now, on the surface, he's a qualified Ayurvedic doctor, someone trained in traditional Indian medicine, a healer. But underneath that, he was living a secret life so dark, so horrific, he earned the nickname Dr. Death. This is the unbelievable story of how a man sworn to save lives became one of India's most infamous serial killers.
Just let that sink in for a second. This wasn't some confession they had to beat out of him. This was a statement he made himself, casually. Think about that. A doctor, a man of medicine, just admitting that he's killed so many people he can't even keep track anymore. They just blur into a number. That one sentence tells you we are not dealing with an ordinary criminal here. And if you think the murders were the whole story, you'd be wrong. Because on top of his killing spree, Sharma was also the ringleader of a huge illegal kidney transplant racket. He admitted to being involved in over 125 of these illegal surgeries. So this wasn't just random brutal violence. It was also a highly organized and, just as deadly, criminal business. So we get to the big question, right? How on earth does something like this happen? How does a man get a degree in medicine, run his own clinic for more than 10 years, and then completely pivot to a life of murder and crime? Well, it seems like it all started with one single event that sent his entire life into a tailspin. This slide really shows you the two sides of the coin. On the left, you have the professional, the healer. But then, you see the turning point. He invested all his savings into a gas dealership, and he got scammed. Lost 11 lakh rupees, which is a massive amount of money. This one devastating financial blow seems to be the trigger that pushed him down a very, very dark path. And what's really crazy is how fast this all happened. Look at the timeline. He graduates in '84. He's a doctor for a whole decade. Then, in '94, bam, the scam hits. And by 1995, just 1 year later, he's fully committed to a life of crime. It wasn't some slow slide into darkness. It was like a switch was flipped. So once that switch was flipped, he didn't just dip his toes into the criminal world. No, he dove in headfirst, running two major and equally terrible operations at the exact same time. It really shows you, this guy had a chilling level of versatility and, frankly, a total absence of a moral compass. So let's break this down. First, you've got the kidney racket, which he ran for 10 years. That's a sophisticated operation, right? It needs his medical knowledge, a network, planning. But at the same time, he's running this other, much more brutal operation, luring taxi and truck drivers to their death, just so he could steal their cars. And this right here gets to the cold, hard reason for all of it. Money. It was all a business. The kidney transplants, those were the high-profit gigs, bringing in lakhs for each one. The driver murders, that was his high-volume, lower-margin hustle. To him, a human life just had a price tag attached to it. And just when you think this story can't get any more disturbing, there's this little detail. To get rid of the bodies of the drivers he killed, he and his gang would throw them into a canal that was known to be full of crocodiles. It shows you the complete ruthlessness. It wasn't just about killing them, it was about erasing any trace that they ever existed. Of course, a crime spree this huge couldn't go on forever. Eventually, the law was going to catch up with Devender Sharma. And it did, leading to a whole series of arrests and convictions that, for all intents and purposes, should have been the end of his reign of terror. So yeah, the justice system came down on him, and they came down hard. In 2004, he gets arrested for the kidney racket, then gets a life sentence for murder, then a few years later, a death sentence for another murder. He's convicted in a bunch of cases, locked away in Tihar jail. I mean, that should be the end of the story, right? But it wasn't. Not even close. After 16 years in prison, the story of Dr. Death takes one final, absolutely bizarre twist. This is where a convicted serial killer, a guy literally on death row, tries to pull off one of the most audacious disappearing acts you could ever imagine. Just look at this timeline. January 2020, after 16 years, he's granted parole for a short time. He was supposed to go back to prison, but he never did. He just vanished. For 6 months, this convicted killer was just out there, but the police were hunting for him, and in July, they finally tracked him down. And where did they find him? This is the part that is just unbelievable. He wasn't hiding in some criminal den. He had started a whole new life, in disguise,
living as a holy man, a priest in a religious ashram. The man sentenced to death for being a serial killer was pretending to be a man of peace.
I mean, this slide just perfectly sums up the absolute insanity of it all. On one side, you have the serial killer, inmate at Tihar, sentenced to death. On the other, the calm facade of a holy man, hiding in plain sight in a place of peace and sanctuary. It's the last shocking transformation in a life that was just full of them. And that brings us right back to the question we started with, and it feels even heavier now. Was it the money that broke him? Or did that scam just unleash a darkness that was sitting there all along? The case of Devender Sharma is just a terrifying reminder that the potential for incredible good and for absolute evil can live inside the very same person, just waiting for a trigger to decide which one gets out.